Hello and welcome to the Female Executive Survival Guide podcast. I'm Lauren Eyles, an executive coach and mentor with a ton of leadership and board experience to share. Leadership can be lonely, so I'm here to introduce you to amazing leaders so you can learn from us and get to where you want to be quicker. Welcome. Today we'll be talking about how to lift as we climb in our career, which is about how we can be an effective ally for all women. And I'm really keen to learn about this more as an Anglo-Celtic woman. How can I be an effective ally for women from culturally diverse backgrounds? Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that this is recorded on the lands of the Awabakal people and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Did you know that more than half of Australians were either born overseas or are first-generation Australians? But while boards are becoming more gender diverse, a lot of them still lack cultural diversity. Women on Boards, an amazing membership-based organisation that I'm part of, did a great study a couple of years ago where they looked at 232 organisations in Australia. But the data was a bit sad. They found that less than 13% of board members were from a culturally diverse background. And of this group, about 3% of board members were First Nations Australian. The remainder were Anglo-Celtic. So as you can see, there's a really big gap between the actual population in Australia and the people that are representing that population on boards. So I'm really keen to learn how I can help close that gap, not only in boards, but also in leadership. Our guest today, Sara Pantaleo, is a successful business person in Melbourne and chair of the Women on Boards Cultural Diversity Committee. WOB is an amazing advocate not only for gender diversity on boards, but for greater cultural diversity. And WOB is also highlighting the barriers that culturally diverse women may face in leadership. Sara started her career in IT in banking before moving into hospitality and transforming a family business, La Poqueta, 12-restaurant chain, into Australia's largest franchised a la carte restaurant group. Sara is also a non-executive director in the health and small business sectors. Her IT and business qualifications include a Master of Leadership from Deakin University. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you very much for having me, Lauren. I really appreciate it. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm Wurundjeri country.
Oh, how beautiful. Thank you. I haven't spent a lot of time down there, but beautiful, diverse lands that we're privileged to live on, aren't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've started my journey in learning about Indigenous culture this year. I've done some Taruk at the Initiatives of Change, and it's been so wonderful.
Oh, how beautiful. I'm early on my journey as well, and I'm so appreciative when First Nations Australians share any history, culture and stories with me. I always learn so much. So what was it like moving to Australia aged 11 and navigating two cultures?
I've got to say it was very, very difficult. Australia is actually not an easy country to come to. And I come from a very small town in the south of Italy, in Calabria, and the community was about 5,000 people. Everyone knew each other, and as Italians do, we do spend a lot of time together. And when I came to Melbourne, in Brunswick, not far from the city, obviously my father died when I was quite young, so my mother was afraid to let me out. So really the world was just home, school, home. And so even though we were in Australia, I lived an Italian life at home and then trying to learn about Australia, learn the language. And yeah, very, very difficult. It was not an easy transition.
I can imagine. And I know that the schoolyard can be a very cruel and unkind place in Australia too, especially in the era where we grew up, where there wasn't as much celebration of identity and culture and connection globally as there is now.
On that front, to be frank, it was actually fantastic because So Italy is like very Catholic culture back in the 70s, and basically everyone went to church every Sunday. There were certain rituals. Land in Melbourne, 1977, started school in 78, and there was refugees from Vietnam, refugees from Iraq. So I did English as a second language. So for me, my friendship circle was really culturally diverse. So, so in a way, from an all Italian life, I learnt a lot about Muslim culture. I learnt a lot about Asian culture. From that perspective, as a child, it was really amazing. And I had an amazing English teacher. She was fabulous, and she was extremely inclusive. So being in Brunswick as a culturally diverse person is a good place to be back in the 70s.
Oh, so good to hear. And I just think, what would Melbourne be without cultural diversity? It's really part of the magic of what makes that city so special.
Definitely, definitely.
And your personal journey, has that ignited your passion for the important work you do with WOB and chairing the Cultural Diversity Committee?
Yeah, so I suppose along the way, like I learnt English within 6 months, and I really realised that I needed to really enhance my skills in communication, because the way Italians communicate and the way Australians communicate is very different. So I read a lot of books, right? But one of the reasons why I got involved with the WOB Cultural Diversity Committee is because even though as a child I didn't experience a lot of problems when I went to a big corporate in IT, so probably 80% men, 20% women. I did experience racism, and I did experience, you know, gender bias, and it was really, really difficult for women, and I was different, right? And it was like, so one of the things that I was sharing at one of our breakfasts was that, people said you're too much, because I get excited. Italians get excited, and I'm not morose, and
That's a good
if
thing.
I'm excited, I will show it, right?
Yeah.
And so I started adapting how I behaved so that I didn't stand out so much. And I think that's unfortunate if you need to do that. And I want to live in a world where no one needs to do that. I want to live in a world where, and obviously, I had a few years, you know, and what I've learnt is that I'm not going to change how I behave. This is who I am. And as long as I'm not offending anybody and I'm respectful, I will get excited. And I will state a point if I think it's unfair. And I won't let it sit. And I will call it out. And I suppose that's comes with confidence. But I think it's really unfortunate. And I feel like, honestly, there were so many barriers put in front that it was a fight. And to achieve the next goal, it was that much harder for me.
Yeah.
And I don't believe, like, okay, so I survived through it, right? But what about the women that don't? What about the men that don't as well, if they're culturally diverse? I don't think it should be about us having a thick skin. It should actually be about if that people succeed because they've got a great attitude, because they're hard workers, and it does not matter whether they're a man, a woman, culture diversity, disability, whatever the intersectionality that might, it doesn't define you, but that you might have, it shouldn't matter. And
Absolutely.
I always worry about the ones that can't speak up.
For sure.
And so that's where my passion came from, because where when I migrated here was about, you know, our demographic. Now it's a different demographic, whether it be from East Asia or Asia or whatever it may be, because now I don't stand out as culturally diverse. But they may stand out as culturally diverse, and I want to pave the way, and I will share this story that just recently happened. I met this beautiful person at the gym, and she's of Asian descent from India, and she's a gorgeous lady. She's an accountant, highly accomplished, loves sport. She'll know who she is if she watches this, and actually played water polo for India. And I invited her to come to the Women on Boards Culture Diversity Breakfast on the 17th of September. And she's interested in getting on a board. And she spoke up to say, I don't know where to start. I love sport. I want to help. And then someone spoke up, said, come and talk to me. I'm on a sports board. I'm
Fantastic.
going to help you. And anyway, I've been guiding her along the way, and she just got her first volunteer board
Oh,
on a
amazing.
sports board. And to me, that brings me joy,
Yes.
because to me, that's how it should be.
Mm.
We embrace, we support, and we elevate, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's such a beautiful example. It gives me goosebumps. And I think not only is it good for business in leveraging and utilise all the talents and expertise of the beautiful population of Australia, but it's a human rights issue that we get to grow up in a country and live in a country where we are welcomed. And, you know, we talk about the concept of a fair go. It's not a fair go, and we're not truly living the value of mateship if we're not meeting each other for who we are, and providing that safe space where we can all bring our whole selves to work. So thank you for the work you're
Exactly.
doing.
No, thank you. And I think we're all Australian, right? I'm
Mm.
an Australian citizen. I do have dual citizenship, because I don't forget where I was born,
Mm.
but I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
No.
You can do both. You can embrace both, and being an Australian means that.
Mm.
Means that I love what Lauren is doing. I love what Lauren brings to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I love what Sarah brings to the table, and you know, every one of us, we will learn more and more. I'm continuing to learn every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the world around us is continuing to change. So having that openness and learning mindset is so important. Sarah, you've spoken when we met offline. You mentioned that there are additional layers of complexity and barriers that women from culturally diverse backgrounds can face. I've only experienced the gender bit, and that on its own can be quite heavy and hard to deal with. Can you share a little bit about what some of those additional layers and the experience of those might be?
Yeah, so I touched upon, even from a background point of view, in the way we emotionally react, in the way we physically react
Mm-hmm.
and express ourselves, and the way we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said earlier, I adapted one of my early board roles, because I'll go back a little. Back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, in the IT world, even though it was extremely Anglo-Celtic, male-centric, it was in your face.
Mm.
It was obvious. It was in front of you, and you just moved on. You didn't let things get to you. But what I find is happening now, it's more subliminal, because people say, oh, yes, of course we're inclusive.
Mm.
But do you behave like you're inclusive? And one of my first board roles, I was really quiet, because, you know, I've had professional careers and what have you. And some of the comments that were made by some of the men, even from a gender perspective, and like making comments in the way I might have communicated.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not actually listening to my point. You're not actually listening to my perspective.
Yes.
You're not actually listening to say, what can I learn? You're coming in with judgment. You're
Yes.
coming in with, you know, that unconscious bias. And it's like, you know, yet again, I felt like it was a battle again.
Mm.
And it was like, okay, now it's a bit more subtle, because we are an Anglo-Celtic male, and we wear nice suits and we pretend we're inclusive, but then the comments that come out are a lot more hidden.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's a lot harder to battle. And, you know, and some of it is comments that are made to me about other cultures, where then I'll say, hang on a sec, let's consider that person because they might have something to give. We don't exclude them because of their name. We don't exclude them. Let's include everybody and let's assess everybody on the skill. But not only that, what is the soft skill that they can bring to the game?
Absolutely.
One of the boards that I'm on, I am the chair of finance and risk. And when we're doing the committee's matrix, the skills matrix, what we're trying to do there is include skills, but also include soft skills. That someone we look after, we build gardens for vulnerable communities, and it's about what are the soft skills that we can bring. And that particular committee is very diverse in age, gender, and different backgrounds. So it's really a pleasure to be on it.
Amazing.
And I think that actually makes us more effective. It actually makes us more productive. And, you know, we were going to build a garden in Gaza. But unfortunately, because of the war, it didn't go ahead. But it was for vulnerable kids. And one of the things is one of the members is from Palestine, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you can't really do that because this may happen." Oh well, we weren't aware of that nuance. That's fantastic to know, right? So really, it makes you richer
Yes.
for having the diversity.
It makes you make better decisions, understand the communities and the customers that you serve.
Yes. So I say to anyone that's not embracing it, what I say to you is you are missing out. Because you're going to have groupthink, you're going to have one perspective, and you will miss out on opportunities that either your board or your organisation could have by not having a diverse team.
Absolutely. Especially in a globally connected world with a big rate of change. We're not truly on an island isolated anymore, and we haven't been for quite a few decades.
Definitely, Lauren.
So I would love to know, as an Anglo-Celtic woman who has positions of leadership, how can I be an effective ally for women coming through from culturally diverse backgrounds?
Well, because I've seen this behaviour from HR departments, I say give everybody an opportunity. And well, a couple of things. When I was in my 30s, I said, I don't believe in quotas for boards. I think it's ridiculous. It should be on merit. Fast forward, I'm in my 50s now, and it's 2024, and some of it hasn't cut it. So I actually would say be strategic about it and have the skills that you need for whatever you're trying to achieve in your organisation. But alongside that, when you're looking at the skills, actually be very directive about some of the kind of diversity that you want on that board or you want in your team at executive level. To say, if like when I joined La Poqueta, there were too many Italians. And you think it's an Italian restaurant, makes sense. But at the same time, we're operating in Australia.
Yeah.
So by the time I became CEO and I built my team, it was very balanced across gender. It was very balanced across other factors, age, even culture, absolutely. We had from all walks of lives. And in actual fact, Harmony Day in March, we would all bring a dish from our country of origin. It was an absolutely amazing time. But what I'm saying is actually say, look at your list, right? I did, as part of my master's in leadership, I looked at diversity in workplaces and I focused on small businesses and I interviewed 15 businesses from 6 employees to 200 employees, and not one of those organizations had a diversity program. And one of them, amazing friend of mine, amazing, I would probably consider him an ally. But when we looked at his stats, 86% of his staff were Anglo-Celtic. The majority of his franchisees were East Asian.
Oh, wow.
So was he truly reflecting his client? He was not. Right? So I think you need to look at, are we reflecting our customer base? Are we reflecting Australia? Are we reflecting how we need to operate?
Yes.
That's the first question you should ask. And I'm not even using the quota word, but I'm saying, what do we need, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be absolutely pointed on it. You have to be committed to it. And then from there, be open. You accept all applications and you look at the applications according to the needs that you've identified. And some of it will be diversity, right? But if you've got a board that has 80% men and they're all of a certain age, you can be sure you're going to be set up not for success. Why? Not because men can't be amazing at what they do. Of course they can, right? But at the end of the day, you're getting one perspective.
Yeah. You're getting a particular life experience and viewpoints or viewpoints.
Correct.
When you were speaking, Sarah, I was thinking, we have the board skills matrix, and that's well accepted. Maybe it's applying a skills matrix and a knowledge matrix, including cultural knowledge, to our workforce.
Well, it may be cultural, but I also, like I said, all the different layers and, understanding disability. And, one of the things that I did implement when I was at Labketa head office, because it was a safe space, we took in special needs students for their 2-week, right, there was a special school near us, they asked us, and we said, absolutely. And they had special needs, and, they came and did their work experience with us. I thought it was really good to do that, not just for that individual, but it was really good to that for my team.
Yes.
Because they understood some of those students that were so committed, such hard workers. They would listen, they would do anything. They were so appreciative.
They gave their
right?
all.
Sometimes you hire someone and you're like, hello, you get paid to do this job, Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So sometimes we take it for granted, is my point. So if you embrace it, you'd be surprised what you get.
So true. And I can imagine the vibe in the office during those 2 weeks. There would have been so much love for life and really lifting the whole
and
team.
we had a distribution centre because obviously we ran the franchise, not the restaurants. And one of the young men, I'll never forget him, he was a really lovely young man, and he was working in the warehouse with our warehouse manager. And when he left, we gave him a little going away lunch.
Nice.
And oh my goodness, he became our best friend. It was just wonderful.
How gorgeous. Oh, it sounds like more of a gift for the team than for the neighbours and the students that were coming in.
Absolutely.
So knowing all the things you know now, or the wisdom and life experience, if you went back to your first leadership role and started over, is there anything you do differently?
I would call it out. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it would have worked though, and if they were ready for it.
Yeah.
Because it definitely took me an extra 2 years to get a promotion than an Anglo-Celtic man. I'm hoping that all of that's changed now. I'm talking about the 80s and 90s. And I think I wouldn't have tried to change my character to adapt there, but I felt that it was a mechanism for survival.
Yeah.
So I suppose where the world has changed somewhat from then to now is that you can call it out. There are a lot of laws around it that you can actually, people just can't discriminate. They do it subtly, right? But if at the end of the day, people at least have the opportunity to call it out. we didn't have that opportunity then.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that it doesn't happen to that level now. But that's probably the only difference. I wouldn't work less harder. I wouldn't be less committed. I definitely would have continued on that. I think the years that I had, and what I'm thankful for, they were an institution that really, really supported training. And because I've got a curious and thirst for learning, I did a lot of personal development, skill development. So they embraced that. So it wasn't all bad. It was a great 13 years in a lot of ways.
Fantastic.
It was just tough, that's all.
Yeah.
And I think I realised how tough it was when I left.
Yes, when that actual
Because
immediate
sometimes
pressure's off.
during it, you don't realise.
Yeah.
On reflection, you're like, did that really happen?
Absolutely. And I look at things differently now. There's another generation. Now I've got nieces, as I'm sure you do too, having children. It's grown-up children. We look at things, how far things have moved, but how far they've still got to go. And that sort of is what drove me to start the podcast, to really support and inspire women with the kind of tools and resources I wish I'd had.
That's so true, Lauren. And I know people have fatigue around this, but it's not over. It'll be over when we don't have to say how many men or women we have, how many culturally diverse. You know, when you look at cultural diversity on boards less than 13%, right? I want you to think about this. They're double counting them, because if a culturally diverse person has a board role and there are multiple boards, they're counted according to those numbers. But if you were to do a 1-to-1, you would be surprised it's less than 13%.
It's less still. Wow.
So the time when we don't have to think about gender, the time where we don't have to think about disability, and everybody gets equal opportunities, that's when it'll be over.
Yeah.
It is not over. We need to amplify it, we need to talk about it, and we need to call it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, when someone's being discriminated against or overlooked or whatever it is, there's a real cost for them to call it out, even though the laws might be there and things. So for a lot of us, it's thinking about the power and influence that we have and how we can use it for good, and opening our eyes a bit more to what's going on in our workplaces. And when something's not right, when someone's being talked over or overlooked or ignored, excluded, that's our opportunity and really our responsibility to use our power behind the scenes for good, so that that person doesn't have to sacrifice the possibly less power that they have, which can make things even more difficult for them.
Definitely, because that's what's tough. I think you highlighted a really good point here, that the person that's in the lesser role, they might be applying for a job, or they might be working, or they might be applying for a board role. It's important that the people making the decisions notice it. And they are the ones that ensure that it's a fair system.
Absolutely.
And that's everybody. That's men, women, all of us. It takes all of us to do that.
And when I think about leadership and change management, the term that sticks with me is culture starts at the top. It starts at the board, the CEO and the C-suite, but especially the board and the CEO. So that role modelling, being very intentional and conscious of inclusion and utilising the talents and getting to know everyone in the team. And, you know, I just think there's so many things we can do that are not big things, but they can be really big in impact if we're consistent and we're genuine and intentional.
When I'm talking to, because I do business coaching and mentoring, and when I talk to business owners, I say this to them. Not only must you have emotional intelligence, because it is really important that you read your team, and if you see something isn't right, you need to ask them. But you also need to understand the collective and the collective intelligence and behavior and the dynamic. And when you are having meetings, understand what's going on to the collective. because if there is something going on in the collective and you don't sense it, you don't not aware of it, not only will you have unhealthy teams, but you will actually have an unproductive organization. So it does pay to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Even if nothing else, do the right thing, because the stats are there.
Yeah.
There's been loads of research, right, that shows that inclusive teams are more productive and they actually affect the bottom line. So if nothing else, do it for that reason.
Absolutely. And if you reduce the noise and have a really healthy, happy workforce, leveraging the talents of that workforce, you're going to be coming up with much better ideas. You're going to be more in tune with your market, whether your market is Australia, as we know it is a culturally diverse market, or international. And if we're not being intentional about this, we're missing out. We're not being a productive country.
Yeah, so true, so true. So yeah, so definitely I love the way you put it, being intentional about everything that you do and really be aware, be aware.
Be aware. I love it. What would your survival tip be for a woman who's just starting out as an executive today?
Believe in yourself. Do develop your skills, but also develop your emotional intelligence. Because obviously you also need to bring your perspective. But even if something is upsetting you, what I've learned over the years, instead of accusing, ask with curiosity. So ask with curiosity, because it may be that you misunderstood as well.
That's really powerful.
And that's, I've learned that over the years, right? And it's helped me a great deal. But at the same time, do not accept being mistreated, and just gently say to someone how it makes you feel. It's not unprofessional to say to someone, I cannot believe you've just said that. This is how it's made me feel. Do you realize what your words, like, I just think it's okay. It's not unprofessional to call out disrespect.
Yes, that's incredibly powerful and also I think incredibly brave. So really the opportunity for all women to know that there's more than enough success to go around and look out for each other, be friends for
Yeah.
each other
Oh,
and
definitely.
listen out for what's going on so that you can help lift and improve that culture for everyone by working together.
Yeah, and also I will recommend, if you're someone that doesn't feel that you can do that, that's okay. What you do is you take the person aside one to one and just tell them how you feel.
Yeah.
And that might be a better way for you. The reason why, I suppose, at this point in my life, I do believe it's important to be professional and say it in the group, so that everybody else can acknowledge what's going on.
Oh, wow.
And it can't be swept under the carpet. And look, when I talk about teams, if something goes wrong and you are leading a team, you do executive coaching, so you'll appreciate this. I always say, if someone's done something wrong, you deal with that in private and you celebrate in public. I
Yes.
endorse that all the way. However, if someone's been inappropriate, discriminatory, and made a subtle, inappropriate comment, I'm sorry, that needs to be done in public. If you've done that in public, you need to, in a respectful way, be said, hey, that's not right. Because otherwise it keeps getting kept under the carpet
It becomes
and it keeps being
entrenched.
subliminal.
Yeah.
And if we don't bring it out, we can't resolve it.
And there's that collective sense of the behaviour we walk past is the behaviour we accept. So especially with things that are outright against the law nowadays, we know it's illegal to discriminate and to be derogatory about people on several legal fronts. I think that's incredibly important to address.
Look, an example I'll give you, one of the early boards, not a board that I'm on now, a gentleman, who came across very professional and what have you, there was there was 3 women on the board, and there was mainly men on the board, and he said to us, "Oh, this is a women's issue. I think you 3 should comment on it." And I looked at him and I said, "I beg your pardon? I beg your pardon. Can you believe you've just said that?" I think that we bring a lot more to the table than just giving you our point of view on a woman's issue. I won't accept that. That's rude. That's subliminal. And that is a derogative kind of stuff that is happening today.
People being put in boxes, not seen for the fullness of who they are as a person,
Correct.
a professional, but stuck in a box.
We are part of this board. We are part of this collective. Let's all discuss it together. Let's listen to everybody's perspective, no matter what the topic is.
Yes.
Right? And that's what I'm talking about. That's real inclusivity.
Absolutely. I think this is something I read in the WOB report. Not just being invited to the table, but truly listened to and respected and included when you're there.
Oh, no, absolutely. And also preparing the workplace or the board for it. Because a friend of mine, Molly Muse, that I recently met earlier in the year, she's an amazing lady in STEM. And she's been helping young women in STEM. And, you know, we're all talking about how many women we need in STEM and so forth. And she's talking to some of the culturally diverse women. She's from Africa herself. And they go, "We started in that job, but we resigned." Because they went to the job, but then the workplace wasn't ready for them, so they still didn't treat them right. So there's no point in hiring them if you're not going to truly do it for the right purpose. So maybe that's one of the reasons why you're not keeping women in STEM. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if you're putting some measures around that and monitoring and supporting as you go, you'll be able to course correct. You won't have to wait until someone leaves. You'll know that there's some issues and you can lean in and support them and resolve those issues or move those people on, deal with those behaviours.
If you have a program with your team before someone joins the team, if you haven't had an inclusive place and you're starting to roll it out, it is important to train the team. So let's say it's a neurodiverse, as an example, person coming into the team. You need to prepare the team to say, the neurodiversity means this is the nuance, this is how we communicate, so et cetera, et cetera. So that means we're not just putting a person that's got a different perspective without the training of the rest of the team.
Yeah. Broadening our thinking and sense of possibility beyond the ways that we've done things up until now and what we've known up until now. And we're seeing the importance of that. So I would love to know, if people are curious about Women on Boards and the work of the Cultural Committee, how can they get involved?
So basically, at the moment, we're going to be running an annual event for cultural diversity on the 17th of September, which is Citizenship Day. So our inaugural one was this year and it went really well, and we ran it on the same day nationally. And the committee members got the speakers and facilitated it and what have you, and it went really well. So please reach out if you want to be one of the speakers, if you want to be involved. But also we do interviews as well. We've done lots of interviews with diverse women on boards. But also it'd be good to do interviews. We're looking for men that are allies, that are maybe Anglo-Celtic men or Anglo-Celtic women, that would be interviewed if they've actually successful in having a really diverse board. It'd be great to interview them because it takes all of us to do it, right? Rather than saying, "Oh, we're going to do one great thing." It's all of us doing something small, so we create the ripple effect, right? And so what Women on Boards have done now, as part of the Women on Board strategy, it's not just about gender. There is an overlay on that, the culture diversity. And when the surveys are being done, they're done that way. If you're a member of Women on Boards it'll be good if we don't know what your background is. We do statistics and all of that as well. And there's a survey every 2 years. So maybe there's opportunities to be involved in that as well. But reach out to me or directly to Women on Boards, and we'll direct you in the right way.
Excellent. And I'll pop all the links to your LinkedIn and Women on Boards and the committee in the show notes as well. I really love that idea. Oh, you're welcome. I love that idea around involving allies, and I think some of the chairs in Australia, men and women who are allies and have been part of this successfully, and who can talk about the benefits for their organisation, that can be an incredible driver of change, learning from each other and sharing those case studies.
No, absolutely. Absolutely agreed.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me today. Everyone, if you were inspired by this conversation with Sarah, please let me know. And if you're looking for a coach or mentor to help you thrive at work, you can find me at laureneyles.com.au. Until next time. Thank you for listening. This podcast was recorded on Awabakal country on Australia's east coast. All advice is general in nature. If you liked this podcast, please like, rate and share. You can connect with me at laureneyles.com.au.